Thank you, man. I couldn't have written that better myself. Oh, wait, I did write it. Never mind. So, thank you for the introduction, and thank you for including me. Thanks to Matt and Rick and everybody that made this possible. This is my passion. This is one of my favorite things to talk about is youth sports. I'm involved in so many levels in my community locally and now starting to branch out even more internationally. So a little bit about me, as was just mentioned, I am one of the team chiropractors for the Baltimore Orioles, where I am proud to have been participating for the last 3 years. I'm also one of those people uh, I was with the Bowie Bay Sox, the AA Oriole team, for 16 years. It took me a little while to get out of the minors and get to the majors, but I'm excited to be here. We also do a lot of work with the University of Maryland, and primarily with their baseball team. But the biggest thing is working in the community with youth sports. And the reason that I bring all of this up is that it does start with kids. And if we could do a better job of educating parents, educating coaches, educating kids to pick up good habits now, that pays dividends as they get older. And then, yes, I also work with the Baltimore Ravens, little different style of play. But let's talk about first, because when I got asked to do this, I got asked to discuss tell me about sports chiropractic. But I think in order to be able to do that, you have to know what a chiropractor does. As Rick mentioned earlier, we've been on the outside looking in, kind of living in our own world, but yet, strength and conditioning and athletic trainers found a place for us in professional sports. So, kind of our scope of practice is we're a drugless approach to neuromusculoskeletal conditions, which is a lot of things going on. We are licensed to evaluate, diagnose, make treatment recommendations, do x-rays, physical therapy, rehabilitation, and get involved in preventative care and exercise and nutrition. And one of the big topics that we'll talk about is proper body mechanics. But how cool is it to be able to do all of these things with experts, that we divide this up and you can go to the best of the best and create your own sports medicine team around you, whether you're a pro athlete or just a young athlete. But the big science part that we do in our field is something called an adjustment or spinal manipulation. And we do a lot of soft tissue work if and when indicated. And basically, what that is, we are involved in restoring function. And that's just one part of getting somebody better, right? So if we can help the body function a little bit better, doesn't it make sense to have someone help them get stronger and more fit around a better functioning body? And doesn't it make sense to feed them the right things in their body so they can heal from the inside out, thus making a professional athlete? But it's got to start when they're younger, right? So, what is a sports chiropractor? What's different about sports chiropractors? And I think Matt, you alluded to this earlier, is that we too are a special breed. I mean, you've got to be possessed sometimes to work in the environments that we do, in the pressure that we do, with the athletes that we do, and the time and commitment and the skills that we learn and share. But for me, it's a trickle down effect, right? Um, Rick brought up the number of chiropractors involved in baseball now. These are stats from 2020, and to me, if there are chiropractors working at the highest level, it needs to trickle down. Why can't we be doing the same good things to young athletes that the major league athletes are getting? And again, our biggest thing is function and performance. So if you have I'm not even talking about, if something's broken, let's fix it. that's what a lot of chiropractors do. You have this little lower back complaint, so you go in to see a chiropractor, he evaluates you, x-rays if necessary, makes treatment recommendations that may include something called an adjustment. You put motion and mobility back in the spine, allow the muscles to heal around them. They'll work with their physical therapist, with their athletic trainer, strength and conditioning, get stronger, and then everybody's happy. Life is good. But probably 75% of what we do in a professional athletic training room is performance enhancement. What does it feel like if we can get a joint to move a little bit better? What if we can get motion and mobility into the lower back, into the hip, to allow someone's stride to open up and allow them to function better? Does a tenth of a second, 100th of a second make a difference between getting to first base and getting thrown out, or getting to a ball that maybe you're like, how did he get that? Or in the upper back, in the thoracic spine, in the shoulder, allow greater ranges of motion. So when that person is reaching for a ball, do you think that extra inch makes a difference? Abso-friggin-lutely. But we can't do it ourselves, right? We have to do it as a sports medicine team. And that's what this is all about. And that's what I love Rick's vision for the organization, is to be able to collaboratively all work together. Yes, there are team chiropractors, athletic trainers, and of course, strength and conditioning, which have been a greater part across all sports, which is so neat to see, because it for me, it had been kind of a missing or isolated component that is now more synergistic, and we all get to work together. There are team physicians and all types of physicians, right? There are orthopedists, there are neurologists, there are all these different things. There are physical therapists, there are nutrition. Nutrition is a huge part of what we do, because I may be able to help make something function better. You may be able to get it stronger, but if they're not healing from the inside out, is it really going to stay? How sustainable is that going to be? Heck, we even have team dentists, we have team psychologists. And I mention all of these things because if you have a young athlete that is not formally part of a big sports medicine team, then you need to surround yourself with these types of people to allow your young athlete to compete at their maximum potential and avoid and prevent injuries. So, one of the biggest questions that we get asked is, okay, so how do I find a sports chiropractor? So, one of the things is, because as Rick mentioned earlier, even major league teams would pick up phone books and like, oh, let's try this one. You can't do that. When if you are driving a Maserati, you are not pulling that thing into Jiffy Lube and say, "Hey, can we get the oil change? Can we, can we get my tires rotated?" No, you're taking that to a high-end mechanic. Your kids are Maseratis and Ferraris, and they need to be surrounded by those people that can tend to your athlete. And that includes chiropractors too. So a couple ways is you can ask friends, ask teammates. Um, you can also ask other healthcare professionals. If you have a doctor that you trust, and say, hey, who do you use for chiropractic care? Who do you think can help my son with this or help my daughter with that? Um, Ask healthcare professionals, because a good sports chiropractor will not only do good with the athlete that they work with, they'll communicate what they did and why they did it. And a key part to what we do in professional sports is the communication aspect, the documentation aspect. So everybody knows what's going on with that athlete. When you're young, sometimes that gets segmented, and we don't have a chance for that kid to get better because everything is being done here and there and not focused on the kid. don't trust advertising. Just because someone puts up a sign on a side of the road that says he's a sports chiropractor, what does that mean? He gets Sports Illustrated, he watches ESPN, or she was an athlete when they were 12. Do your research. And the easiest way to do it is try it before you buy it, right? Go to an office. And if you don't get that warm fuzzy when you step into that office, maybe it's not it. Sit down with the doctor, with that chiropractor, and say, hey, this is why we're here. What do you think? And if you are not comfortable, and as I say, get that warm and fuzzy, maybe it's time to move on and we find somebody else. There are so many different networks out there that you can call and trust to take care of your child, to take care of yourself, to find the best chiropractor in your area to help. So don't buy it until you try it. Good on that, right? So the other thing I got asked to speak on is something that's near and dear to my heart. It is developing an emergency action plan. This is one of the biggest areas that I'm trying to push chiropractors, athletic trainers already know and understand, and other healthcare professionals to help educate about emergency action plans. Sure, at the professional level, we see it, but does that happen in youth sports? Do we have them in youth sports? And the answer is no. So I'm planting the seed here. You're not going to be able to listen to my little presentation and be able to all of the sudden develop an emergency action plan, right? But this is planting the seed for you and your youth organization to be able to think about, hey, do we do that? So let's go over a couple things. So in an emergency action plan, you have to form it and then you have to implement. Everybody has got to buy in. What do we do if this happens? What do we do if that happens? And the way you do that is through education and training. One of the biggest things, especially in baseball, involves cardiac conditions. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. So we need to do a better job, we in all phases of healthcare, is to get people to move towards developing emergency action plans, protocols, communication. There is nothing more important than communication in sports medicine. And isn't that the true definition of sports medicine? It's communication. And if we can take an organization and get them to learn different aspects and how to deal with different phases of emergencies, and we practice it, we could be saving lives. Maintenance of emergency equipment and supplies, if you even have it. Is there an AED? Where is the AED? When was the last time it was updated? Simple things like that can help save lives, because at the end of the day, seconds matter. Oh, um, why we glitched there. And the appropriate use of personnel. Look, you have in your organizations now, I am sure you have people that are strength and conditioning specialists. They are athletic trainers. They are physicians. They're physicians' assistants. They're chiropractors. There are different people that can help. How many people on your staff have their CPR up to date? Even the most basic of things, right? This is where we can do and should be doing a better job of educating, and you need to practice it. If the poop hits the fan, what do we do in this case? What do we do in that case? Simple things like, is there 911 in your area? If there is 911 in your area, who's making the call? When you make the call, do you know how to tell the ambulance driver where you are, what field you're on, what's the easiest access to the field? Because every second counts. and we need to do a better job of helping our kids prevent catastrophic injuries. Now, in football, we kind of learned this, how important an emergency action plan is with Damar Hamlin and the incident that he had, and the actions that so many healthcare professionals took that day to save that man's life, and not only save his life, but allow him to come back to play. And everybody was involved in that, right? But again, I still think one of the biggest stats out there is the number one cause of death in baseball is very similar. But do you have the ability to help a child like that? Do you have what it takes to save a child? Now, this happens all the time in, we know about football, right? So catastrophic injuries can happen at any time and in any sport. So, like, I'll let you watch it again. But even in baseball, when you least expect it, and this is when we need to be prepared to help with emergencies, right? I missed the ball, misjudged the ball. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know why I show Oriole highlight. And then even when you think you have things under control and you're controlling your athletes, other things can happen too. So you saw the hit, but did you see what happened to the umpire? We'll take a look at that because just I want you to see the mechanism. And we as healthcare professionals have to have an emergency action plan to help in a case like that.
It's a jam shaft. The barrel came all the way around and then hopefully hit the side of his mask, but you couldn't tell if they got on.
Right? And then this is one of my favorite ones because baseball is supposed to be a friendly sport and everything is good. You hit the ball far, nice walk-off home run, right? Nothing should happen. You never expect anything to happen. But unless you run past second base and you say something to the pitcher about his mother, and the pitcher will then take out, and then it becomes a mess. So you never know when or where you need to have an emergency action plan. So I ask you to get together as a group, as a in your youth leagues, to have a better understanding of what you need to do if the poop hits the fan. Now in baseball, at a youth level, this is the way it should be. Okay, he's down. Do you have an emergency action plan if you need one? And what if there's a retaliation? Can you handle the result of the fight that comes after an incident like this? Drop the helmet, we're going to throw down. Here comes the big brawl. And we can handle this because we have an emergency action plan.
This is really cool because as a pitcher, Bugs looks shaken up right now.
Oh, but that's the way it should be. But it isn't always like that. So is this the end? No, it's just the beginning because we need to collectively do a better job of, especially at a youth level, surrounding yourselves with the best medical, physical staff possible. You know, all the things that should be there, from athletic trainers to strength and conditioning people that can help you safely take care of your athletes and get them stronger. You know, the nutrition side is so big. And these are all things that you can do and practice and become better at in an environment that helps your kids grow. And guess what? When your kid gets to the next level, when they get to college, when they get to the minor leagues, they know what to ask for and what to do to help them get to the next level. So, with that, I want to thank Matt and again for allowing me to be a part of this, and Rick Bishop and all the chiropractors with the Professional Baseball Chiropractic Society that have kind of paved the way. And I can't tell you how valuable it is when a player comes from another team and asks for chiropractic care. I can't tell you how valuable it is where I've treated people at the double A level and they get to the pro level and they ask for care. It's the same care that you should be providing for your children, because they will grow up better, healthier, more fit, and gain better knowledge of how to take care of themselves on their journey, wherever their journey takes them. So again, you guys, thank you so much for allowing me to be involved.
Good.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that intro. I hope to keep you guys a little entertained with this one. I'm going to talk a little bit about what a dietitian does, and then we'll get into snacking and fueling. If you're hungry or if you have low blood sugar right now, feel free to get a snack. I like everybody to be well fueled all the time. Yeah, so I am a registered dietitian with a specialty in sport nutrition. Like Frank said, I also went to culinary school, so all things food and nutrition. I grew up in a household, my mother is a dietitian, and I also played a lot of sports. So it was very natural for me to get into this profession, and I absolutely love it. I just get to talk about food and make sure that we're enhancing the performance of all the athletes that I'm able to reach. So what is a registered dietitian? And maybe you've heard of a nutritionist, and maybe you've been telling other parents, oh yeah, my kid's working with a nutritionist. But let me kind of make sure that you're knowing the difference between a nutritionist and a dietitian. Anybody can call themselves a nutritionist. You can have a nice blog post on the internet and say that you're a nutritionist. You could be another practitioner and say that you specialize in nutrition and call yourself a nutritionist. But a registered dietitian goes to undergrad and gets their master's specifically in these certain categories and courses to sit for the board exam to get licensed as a registered dietitian. They have to go to a 1-year internship. They have to, again, pass the board exam. Now you have to get your master's. And then as far as sport, you can get your CSSD, which is Certified Sports Specialist Dietitian. We have to have continuing education. So we are the nation's expert of food and nutrition. And then specifically, I work mainly with athletes, some gen population. So yeah, kind of check your resources. Make sure that you're looking at resources written by a registered dietitian. Make sure that your dietitian has the credentials that you want them to. Dietitians have come a long way, like Frank mentioned. When I was with the Chicago Cubs minor league back in 2017, a lot of my players did not know what a dietitian was. I obviously taught them, and they benefited from what I was able to teach them, all the way to 2023 when I was with the Washington Nationals. I had our new draft, athletes coming to me, seeking me out. Hey, my dietitian in undergrad, or hey, my dietitian in high school knew my allergies and worked with me on my gut issues. Are you able to, I mean, of course. So from way back when to guys not knowing what dietitians did, or thinking that it was a not great idea to go see a dietitian because that means that they were fat or they were slow or they needed help. That's kind of been, banished now. So now athlete or players are seeing these dietitians as soon as high school. A lot of athletes have dietitians in the collegiate realm. So it's a really great time to be a dietitian and helping these players reach their full potential. We really think that if you're eating at the right time, in the right way, reaching your nutrition goals off season and in season, it's really a secret tool to have in your toolbox for these players to know as soon as possible. I love talking about youth nutrition and especially reaching as young athletes as possible. The younger these players know these tips and tricks, and the parents know these tips and tricks, the better, because they will probably see a dietitian at some time in their career, whether it be like high school, college, minor league, pro. This is going to be a really great presentation for you to take some notes on. Happy to answer any questions too. So let's get to it. Benefits. What are the benefits of correctly fueling before, during, and after the tournament day? Right? So your kid is still growing. There's a lot of opportunity to build good body composition, to build good body mass, to develop the brain during these growing years. So eating the right kinds of micro and macronutrients is really going to support your player in all these realms of growing. Provide steady energy throughout the tournament day. I'm sure you know when your kid is hangry, or maybe you know when you're hangry. We want to have consistent energy throughout the day. And when we talk about consistent energy, we're really talking about stabilizing the blood sugar in your body, right? So we're trying to provide steady energy and not have too many big lows in energy or too many big highs in energy. So we'll talk about how to stabilize energy throughout the tournament day. Boost mental focus. Your brain runs off of sugar, off of glucose. So we want your player to be making good decisions, and that is going to be based off of how they're properly fueled. So are they going to make the best decision when the ball's coming their way, or where they're going to throw the ball next? We want to keep them super sharp. Aids in muscle recovery between games. Every time the game ends, their body's going to try to recover. So if you're not giving the body the kinds of nutrients that it needs to recover, you're just prolonging that recovery process, and you might be playing catch up for a day or so, which you don't want. You want to be ahead of it. Helps prevent fatigue, injury, and illness, right? So the body is asking for micronutrients and macronutrients throughout the whole entire day. And if you're having back-to-back games, you're really going to want to stay on top of it to not feel tired or fatigued. Injury, your body wants to have the right kind of micronutrients throughout the day. So if we're not giving it that, your body's going to start breaking down. It also goes into the mental focus part of it. If you want to know where to step your foot and make that good mental decision, but you're not in the right state of mind and you get lazy with it, you could roll an ankle. So we want to prevent that. We want to stay super sharp. Illness as well. Your body needs a certain amount of micronutrients at all time. If we're not giving it that, and your body's constantly playing catch up and you're just getting really run down, you're going to be prone to illness, and we don't want to sit on the bench, right? Fuels our body before, during, and after competition. All of these points before, during, and after competition are really important, and we're going to get into the timing of those in a little bit. So these are all the benefits, a ton of different benefits, right? So we really want to make sure that we get into our fueling routine as quickly as we can, but you're not going to get it all right all at once, and I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to get into that. Timing. Timing is huge. I can talk all day long about how many calories a player needs, how many macronutrients a player needs, and how best to get those things in. The next level of performance nutrition is getting down timing. When I hear one of my professional players talk about timing of food, hey, Emily, when should I eat this? Hey, Emily, I just finished this. When's my next fueling opportunity? it's like ding, ding, ding. This is great. This means that you've gotten your calorie needs down, you've gotten your macronutrients down. Now we're on to timing, which is super crucial in baseball, especially on a tournament day. So when is the best time to fuel throughout the tournament day? Now, I see that you're looking at all these different checkpoints and you might be thinking, oh my gosh, that's so many different times. But let me break it down for you, and then let me kind of teach you how to simplify this as best as possible. So the night before, right? The night before is really important. The night before is going to help fill the player's glycogen stores. You have a ton of glycogen stores all around your body. You can think of these stores as like energy stores. So if these energy stores are full from the night before, you're already giving your player a really great advantage to have a ton of energy to go off of throughout the day. So the night before is crucial. So we want to have a balanced meal of, I say, smart carbohydrates, lean protein, color, and fluids. So when you're looking at your plate, you want smart carbohydrates. Smart carbohydrates are our grains, right? Our rice, our pasta, our bread, maybe our starchy vegetables like our potatoes or our sweet potatoes, our lean protein like our chicken, our turkey, our seafood, our fish, maybe our leaner cuts of red meat or any plant-based protein, and our color, fruits and veg, and fluids like water. So an example of that is like pasta, grilled chicken, steamed broccoli, and water. So this is really going to help set your player up for success the next day. Morning of, so maybe about 2 to 3 hours before the first game, this is really going to be one of the last opportunities to get in a nice balanced meal, just like the night before, but breakfast style. So this could be things like overnight oats, like oatmeal with berries. You could put peanut butter in there. For the protein, you can have milk, or you can make the oatmeal with soy milk, add chia seeds, flax. So this is going to, again, top off those glycogen stores to really give the kid a lot to run off of throughout the day. And then 1 hour before, you're going to focus on simple carbohydrates. So these simple carbohydrates are going to be given to the player to use as quick, immediate energy with not a lot of need for digestion. You absorb these carbohydrates really quickly, and topping off with a little bit of water. Some examples of these 1 hour before would be like a granola bar, a piece of fruit, pretzels, again with water. Between games and innings, we're going to be focusing on snacking on simple carbohydrates and hydrating. So again, we're going to be focusing on simple carbohydrates because they're easily absorbed. They don't cause a lot of GI disruption, and we're going to be sipping on water about every 10 to 15 minutes. Again, these simple carbohydrate snacks are going to be things like fruit, granola bars, jelly sandwiches, sports drinks. And then post tournament, like post games, post game, if there's a good amount of time after the game before the next or after the whole day, we're going to want to get in that balanced meal, similar to the night before and the morning of the smart carb, lean protein, color, within about 45 to 60 minutes. Your player might not be hungry after the game. That's very normal for the active population because you're kind of in fight or flight. Your blood is rushing to the extremities and not really focusing on the gut for digestion. But this is the perfect time to recover and to refuel because the blood is rushing so quickly around the body. It's asking for these nutrients and it'll be easier to absorb. And you could train the gut to accept this fuel even if you're not hungry. But you can do things that the kid really likes. So you can get a grain bowl from Chipotle. Just make sure we're not putting a ton of unhealthy fat on that bowl and keeping it pretty lean and colorful. You can go to the smoothie shop and make sure that there's good color and good protein in that smoothie. Or if the kid really doesn't feel like having some kind of meal within 60 minutes, you guys can practice on getting in a recovery snack with some good carbs and good protein, and then that'll buy you some time to get in a good balanced meal within the next hour and a half or so. So again, you might be looking at all these check marks and be thinking, my kid is definitely not doing any of this, or it's such a struggle to get him to do this or this. But just try, this is the gold standard. This is what I tell my professional athletes to hit as far as timing. So eventually we can work towards getting to this gold standard. But think about it. If he really struggles with the morning of, we don't have to go all in, all or nothing. We don't have to go right for the balanced meal. If he's not wanting to eat anything at all, just start with a banana or start with an applesauce packet, right? Start training the gut. The gut is just like your biceps or a muscle. You can train it to accept certain food. I've never, I've never worked on pre-fueling with a baseball player and him come back to me and say, oh my gosh, my energy was so wiped after that banana. No, they get hooked. They're like, oh, I felt so good. I want to try, next time a banana on a piece of toast with peanut butter. So you could start working your way up until you get to that nice balanced meal. If he hates snacking in between innings, but you always see him going down, 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 have him be incorporated into the planning of any of these steps, right? So the night before, make that grab bag of carbohydrate, simple carbohydrate fuel. Have him pick what kind of fruits do you want in your grab bag between innings. Have him start making the jelly sandwiches, so that when he goes to that grab bag, he's like, oh, I made this jelly sandwich, or oh yeah, I saw this fruit the night before. So he starts getting interested and incorporated into the planning. So start slow, try not to get overwhelmed, and try to focus on one check mark at a time until these things feel pretty routine. Again, these are the things that we're working on in high school and college and professional. So he's going to see these things at one point. So if you guys start working on this now, he's absolutely, hopefully going to thank you at some point for getting these things right and training his gut to accept this fuel. And he'll be happier and it'll help increase his performance. So win-win-wins. Type of fuel. We did talk about this a little bit already, some types of fuel, but what is the best type of fuel that you should prepare for a tournament day? The big one is carbohydrates. I think that there's a lot of misconception about carbs. Carbs get a really bad rep. I think I'll always have my job just because of this conversation that I'm about to have. Carbohydrates are our number one fuel source. I'll say it again. Carbohydrates are our number one fuel source. We need more carbs than protein or than fat, right? So carbohydrates are our fruits, our vegetables, our whole grains, our dairy, our simple carbohydrates and liquid carbohydrates like sports drinks, right? So carbohydrates are used all day long. And they're also used for quick energy, especially during a tournament day or in between innings. So make sure we have plenty of carbohydrates in our snack bag, incorporated in all of our meals and all of our snacks. Protein, and sorry, carbs, you can eat this pre-training and pre-tournament day, during the tournament day, and after. They're needed for all three times throughout the day. Protein for muscle repair. Protein is mostly needed after the day. A couple hours before the tournament day, you can get in some good protein. You might want to do something that's a little bit more easy to digest, like peanut butter, or like plant-based milk, like soy milk. And then throughout the tournament day, like things like dairy, cheese sticks, yogurt. You can play around with hummus, eggs, and then you can hit the more like animal-based protein post or protein powder if you need it. Just make sure it's third-party tested. And then healthy fat. Healthy fat's kind of intertwined throughout the carbohydrates and protein. There's a little bit of healthy fat in our crackers and in our granola bars and our bread and our cheese sticks and our eggs. Just make sure it's healthy fat and make sure there's not too much unhealthy fat or fat in general in our post recovery meal, because that could delay the protein synthesis and muscle repair. We can leave that for some meals after throughout the day. And then hydration. Water is number one. So make sure that your water bottles are filled, or your kid has a water bottle that he likes that he's going to go towards. If he doesn't like the taste of water, we can play around with flavorings, but this should be drank all day long. Electrolytes can be of use, especially on hotter days or games that have been extended. Or if your child is a heavy sweater, you will know if he's a heavy sweater. You might see some white brim on his hat. That is salt. Or you might see that he is sweating more than others. Everybody sweats at a different rate and in a different composition. So you can use electrolytes from sports drinks or from powder. Just make sure that they're all third-party tested. I could tell you this, Prime is huge and it is not great. I've worked with a lot of parents that their kids are obsessed with Prime and the kid does not want to let it go. That's on them. But Prime doesn't have a really great composition of electrolytes. So make sure that if he's using up room in his gut, that it is something that's actually going to help him. So maybe weaning him off something that's not third-party tested and maybe doesn't have a good composition. We can take advantage of low-fat milk or fortified soy milk post games, and you'll get good, you'll stay well hydrated throughout the day like that as well. Yeah, so we just went over a few different items for you to take advantage of. So all the different benefits of fueling throughout the tournament day and even before the tournament day, timing of nutrition, and also what kinds of fuel is best for your child. If you're overwhelmed by this and if you're thinking we're not doing any of this or this is really confusing, I mean, I had to go to school to learn all this and still learning to this day. So I'm happy to answer any of your questions and just try to keep it super simple and just start working at one thing at a time until you guys have it as a routine. And I have no doubt that you'll get it down and that this could help really improve your player's performance, maybe even mental state, and really make sure that he's having a good time out there. So I know we were going to ask questions after this one. So thank you guys for coming. Matt, thank you for putting this all together and organizing this, and Frank for the introduction. Happy to be here.
Great. Thanks, Emily. Nice job. I'm going to keep you on. We had a couple questions come through for nutrition and then one for Dr. Sock. First question, Emily, glycemic index. Is that something that our coaches should be directing parents towards in regards to, is it important to know what high glycemic and low glycemic foods do to their kids?
Yeah, that's a really high level question for sure. I love a glycemic index question. So I mean, yeah, every kid's going to be very different. Some are going to respond better to certain timing of gastric emptying and how their body digests food. You should absolutely pay attention to this, especially if you're starting to work on proper fueling. You might find that simple carbs are like liquid carbohydrates run through your kid too quickly, or spike your player's blood sugar too quickly. So you might want to pair this with some kind of fiber or some protein. So you will quickly learn what's best for your child. I know, when I'm out there with the players, we have all different kinds of carbohydrates, some with fiber and some without. And I know the guys who can really handle the fibrous carbohydrates, like, an apple, banana, things with like bread and so far. And then the ones that just need liquid carbohydrates and they don't want to handle it, they don't really handle fiber very well. I know guys that can eat a full hamburger right before, an inning and be totally fine. I'm kind of looking at them funny, but it works for them and they've trained their gut. So every single player is going to be very different. So especially when you first start working with them on proper fuel timing, you do want to pay attention to the glycemic index, and then you can kind of train the gut from there. So that's a really great question.
Very good. The second question, Emily, is should parents consider higher pH water when it comes to hydrating their kids? Or just go with regular, your Dasanis and Aquafinas and regular bottled waters?
Yeah, again, everybody's preference is very different. If there's some placebo effect that you really love, that high pH or whatever pH water, go for it if that's what the kid's gonna drink. I'm never gonna stop them from doing that. But your body takes care of normalizing and balancing out your gut's pH and your body's pH. So if you're giving it something that it's gonna have to maybe work a little bit harder to normalize, I wouldn't worry about that. There's also, if the player has pH issues, there's also foods that can help lower and higher, and you don't have to pay that much for that water. So I would say that fad is debunked and you can just go normal water. But if you feel like the kid likes that kind of water, go for it. If it's a placebo effect or if it is actually working for him, go for it. But I would just say normal water is fine.
Might be the last time they went like 4 for 4. They had that Fiji water.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. Organizations pay big money for these fancy waters, and it is what it is.
yeah, and the superstitions that go along with the
Exactly.
game. Thank
Exactly.
thank you so much. Dr. Sock, are you on?
There we go. Sorry about that.
That's all right. That's all right. Thanks for being accessible for us. We had one question in the hopper um, after the morning talks here for you. There was a question regarding mobilizations and manipulations and the difference between the two. Like if we're mobilizing a hip or a shoulder, or the manipulations that our sports chiropractors do. Can you tell us the difference when it comes to, from your point of view?
Sure. So with manipulation, that is what we would call an adjustment. Um, that is so. All right, I'll give the technical answer and then the non-technical answer. It would be a grade 5 mobilization, right? Where we're moving or mobilizing the joint in such a way, either usually with a high velocity, low amplitude movement, staying within the range of motion of that joint to try and regain greater motion. Whereas a joint mobilization will not take it to that degree, will not go that far into um, the overall mobility of the joint. It's usually, people that get adjusted all the time, they have to understand that all chiropractors are not the same. All manipulation is not the same. If you go to a chiropractor and you think something hurts or bothers you, doesn't mean that chiropractic won't help. It's perhaps the technique that provider is doing. That's why we always ask players and athletes, what's worked for you in the past? Let's try and duplicate that instead of reinventing things. There are times that I'll mobilize, but usually I'll do more of the adjustment and I'll lead the joint mob stuff to whoever else is doing hands-on, PTs, ATCs, whoever.
Very good. So the manipulation is actually a grade 5 mobilization.
Yes. So
Got it.
yeah, it's taking it that much further into the joint capsule, um, just before the point of dislocation.
Very good. Thank you for hopping back on.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Outstanding. So we had a question come through from David. He says, what is your recommendation for early games? For example, 8 a.m. start, so 6:45 a.m. warm up. Do you still recommend the 2 to 3 hours uh, but this is an early up? What is your recommendations for these scenarios?
Yeah, that's a great question. I was just typing out some answers. Yeah, that's I would say typically usually the case starting so early. Kind of curious what time the kid is up, but no matter what, you really, really, really want to make sure that you're hitting that day before fuel really well. So we're not missing any fueling opportunities the day before. We're hitting our meals and our snacks the evening before, really pushing those carbohydrates. Again, this is all going to help fill the glycogen store, especially since you're not going to have the best time to fuel right before the tournament day starts or the game starts. And then in the morning, we still need to hit that pre-game fuel, but we're probably most likely not going to be able to get in a nice balanced meal with some lean protein and healthy fat. So what we will focus on are those simple carbohydrates. So we will focus on fruit and grains. So you could do things like fruit, jelly sandwiches, juice, applesauce squeezies. If the kid is basically like waking up and jumping in the car, have those things in the car that he can eat, easily digest, and then get ready to go. And then since he didn't get in that full meal before the game, you really want to make sure that he's on top of his inner inning fueling. So really making sure that he's going for those carbohydrate choices, that he's properly hydrated. So you really want to make sure that the day before is super on, and then the inner fueling is super on, while still getting that pre-game simple carbohydrate in.
Very good. Thank you so much. That was a great answer. And thanks for being accessible for us.
No problem.
Very good.
Thank you for being here today. Thank you to the PBSCCS for putting on this event. I'm really looking forward to spending the next 30 minutes or so talking about how stronger athletes are better athletes and how we can develop strength and power for baseball players. As we get going today, there are 3 key take-home points I want us to focus on. One is periodization options for off-season physical development. We will identify key performance indicators for our athletes, and we will explore exercise selection to fit individual needs. All of this surrounding how stronger athletes are better athletes in developing the engine for our players. You know, when I go to clinics, when I go to conferences, I hear people speak, there's always something I want to take home with me. So today, as we go through this, I'm going to break down what goes into the program, but at the very end, I'm also going to provide sample programs. I don't want to just talk in theory and give explanations. I actually want to give everybody here today something that they can take home, an example of what this may look like, so they can get going with their athletes if they choose to. So let's hop in. Our off-season program really fall under 2 categories. 1, optimizing physical performance. This includes our strength, our power, our movement quality, and our work capacity. And this will be a consistent theme throughout our talk today. Our second main goal is durability. The best ability is availability. We want to be able to train, practice, and play. So what we look at when we see our load is greater than our capacity, so the work that we are doing is larger than what we can handle, there's a greater increase of injury potential. However, if we have a quality work capacity, we're able to handle large amounts of load, our performance has an opportunity to improve, as well as our ability to do it day in and day out. On the next slide, we will discuss some individual needs and KPIs for what is our individual goal. As we talk about load and capacity and skill development, I really like this image on the left here. When you look at the smaller funnel, that is someone who is underdeveloped and can only complete so much work, whether that is lessons, practices, games, workouts, whatever it may be. However, as we become more robust and a better athlete, there is more potential for us to do more work, whether that is volume or intensity or quality of work in any given area. With individual player goals, there are really 3 questions we can ask ourselves. Who is the player right now? Who do they want to be? How can training help them get there? What is their talent, their skill set, their physicality right now? How do they envision their game growing and being able to support that? And have they created a plan of action to help them reach their goals? Great example of this is Aaron Judge and Jose Altuve, 2 MVPs, 2 multiple-time All-Stars with different sizes, different positions, different skill sets, but they have really enhanced their performance to have success on the field in 2 different ways. Key performance indicators, or KPIs, for our athletes can include anthropometrics, our height, our weight, our body composition. Movement quality. We can look at movement screens, we can look at passive versus active ranges of motion, and we can look at position-specific movement quality. We can also look at performance assessments, whether that be strength, power, speed, change of direction or agility, or conditioning, and we'll go over those in more detail in the coming slides. Let's talk anthropometrics. That's our body. How tall is our player? How tall is our athlete? We can use a stadiometer like we may at the doctor's office, or we can use a tape measure, a ruler, keep track at home. Our body weight. How is our athlete growing? Are they gaining weight consistent with what we want to see from them as they mature into adults? Our body composition. Are they adding lean mass at what we may deem as the appropriate amount for their frame to support the gains that they are making in the weight room to then support what they're doing on the field? When discussing movement quality, athletes are often put through movement screens to see how they move through space. An example of this is the functional movement screen, or the FMS, that has 7 different movements that athletes will go through. We can also look at passive versus active range of motion, otherwise known as flexibility and mobility. With baseball players, we can look at position-specific movements as well. On-Base U has created hitters and pitching-specific movements that we can look at to see how a player moves and how it may translate to on-field performance. When discussing performance assessments, there are a variety of options given our space, our availability, and even with regard to our financial commitments. For strength testing, choose exercises that work for you and your athletes. Maybe you want to do a trap bar deadlift, and maybe it's a 3-rep, 5-rep estimated max. Maybe you're tracking weight over time to see how a player is progressing. That is an option that's available for you. For power, a consistent power assessment that strength coaches will complete is a vertical jump. If you have a Vertec, great. If you don't, put tape up high on a wall and give it a slap, see how high a player can jump. If you have a little bit of money, maybe you'll invest in a Just Jump mat. Or if you're at a private facility, a college, a university, professional sports, maybe you'll do some sort of jump assessment, whether it's a vertical jump or a counter movement jump on force plates. For speed and agility, you can always use a stopwatch. Hit start, hit stop for whatever sort of sprint or agility you're looking at. The 5-10-5 Pro Agility that was used in the NFL Combine is a great example of this. At the Major League Baseball Draft Combine, they're now using timing gates for the 30-yard sprint. You can do a 20-yard sprint, a 30-yard sprint, a 60-yard sprint, as has been done in the past. Whatever you feel like is a quality assessment that you can be consistent with, have at it. And conditioning. Some people like to do conditioning tests, some don't. That's fine. That's not up for me to decide. You can do a 5-minute test, a yo-yo, a beep test. You can put players on a mile run if you want to. If you choose to, that's up to you. Those are options available if you decide it's best for you and your players. We'll talk periodization. Periodization is a strategic plan involving multiple phases that build towards achieving a goal within a given time frame. For our purpose here today, it's our off-season strength training. Each phase is designed to build the foundation for the following block. Let's look at our pyramid right here of work capacity, strength, and power. Work capacity, or volume, is the base of our pyramid, which everything is built upon. From there, we will develop strength given our newfound ability to complete work. And at the very top, we will become more efficient and more powerful with all of our movements. Being strategic with our stress and with our appropriate stimulus is key to creating the adaptations that we want for our athletes. An example here, I have posted on my board in my office, and it's a constant reminder for me when working with our players of, are we doing the right thing for our player at that time? We want to make sure that the work that they're doing isn't too easy where they stay the same, and it isn't too hard where it's too difficult to recover from, but it's just right and they are getting what they need to adapt and become a more robust, durable, resilient, powerful athlete as we go. Another way to look at that is volume and intensity. When we have high amounts of volume, we have to be cognizant of the intensity that we're doing the work in, and vice versa. As the intensity or the stress becomes more and more intense, we have to be mindful of the volume to make sure we aren't overloading our athletes and putting them in a compromised position. There is a bit of yin and yang, ebb and flow to this, and we'll discuss that further as we go. Our goals for the work capacity or volume phase are to improve general work capacity to support increased training and skill practice for later in the off season while being more resilient to fatigue. This is the base of our pyramid. We will also look to gain lean muscle mass to help protect against contact and maintain strength in season. We will work through full ranges of motion to support enhanced movement quality. An example of improving our work capacity is filling up our cups. When you have a small cup, there's only so much water or fluid you can put into it before it overflows, and it cannot handle that load or that water put into it. But as we grow our work capacity, we grow our volume of work that we are able to handle and that we become resilient to, we can handle more water, more load in our cup. Now, what does this look like in practice? I'm glad you asked. Here is an example of a training program in the work capacity phase. We will start with our core complex. I like putting core early in the workout because it helps players from an active warm-up standpoint, connecting their lower half to their upper half. Medicine balls can be an important aspect of a training program for baseball players as well, and we will begin our progression with a tall kneeling format towards our medicine ball work in the work capacity phase. We will then superset goblet squats and lat pull downs, beginning with 3 sets of 12 and progress through the 4 weeks, ultimately ending with 12, 10, 8, and 8 reps over 4 sets to create time under tension through our main lifts. Our next block will go into a reverse grip RDL and alternating dumbbell incline bench press. I've grown to like the reverse grip RDL because it helps players stack their scaps and get into a neutral spine position while working through that hinge pattern. Alternating dumbbell incline press is an option. You can really use any sort of push or press you want, but again, to help create time under tension while building that work capacity. Our third block is predominantly isometric work. This will be less wear and tear on the body while promoting joint and tissue health for our players. Once we have completed our work capacity phase, we will move on to the strength phase. And before we do, we'll talk a little bit about progressive overload and what that looks like. A prime example of this is Milo of Croton, a celebrated strongman, wrestler, and Olympic champion in Olympic Greece. He is famous for, as a boy, carrying a calf on his shoulders for days on end. And as that calf became bigger and weighed more and grew into a big, strong bull, well, Milo of Croton grew as well. An example of that for us parents in real life is our children. When we first have our 8-10 pound baby boy, baby girl, we can get pretty tired holding on to that baby for hours on end. But as they grow and we grow as parents, now that 30-40 pound toddler, it feels like nothing when we're going to pick them up. Same thing for our players and our athletes. As we train Through the strength phase, we will add weight to the bar, add intensity to the bar, add intensity to the lifts, so our athletes develop that strength through progressive overload. Let's see how this strength program may look. I want to remind everybody what we discussed earlier about volumes and intensities. Now that we are in a strength phase, our volume will be decreasing while our intensity, or oftentimes the weight that we move during this phase, is increasing. We will start again with the core complex, moving from predominantly isometrics and a tall kneeling position into a half kneeling position with more difficult and challenging isometric work mixed in. Our medicine ball complex, we are progressing from a tall kneeling position to a half kneeling and standing position. For our main strength block, we are progressing from a goblet squat to a front squat, going from 3 sets of 12, 3 sets of 10, etc., into 3 sets of 5 or 4 sets of 5. This will have increased weight on the bar, working at anywhere from 70, 75, 80% of what a 1 rep max would be. We are also progressing to a neutral grip pull down or pull up, depending on your athlete and their capability, to allow them to move more weight during this phase. Our next block is a band supported RDL with a 1-arm dumbbell incline bench press. Band supported RDL, we will wrap a band underneath the athlete's armpits so they have to squeeze, lock in the scaps, and maintain that neutral spine while hitting their hinge, hitting that posterior chain, developing that strength in the lower half. 1-arm dumbbell incline bench press is a sound option for upper body strength. I like this because it helps create that core strength and that connection through that arm, that side, doing the press all the way to the ground. Because if they don't have a strong core to be able to keep their feet on the ground and keep their body from shifting, they're not going to be able to move a lot of weight during this exercise. Block 3, the previous phase, we focused on isometrics. Now we're going to be a little bit more dynamic and move through space. Examples can be step ups, TRX rows for lower and upper body strength, and wall washers to help move through space and movement quality with all of our work that we're doing, moving heavy, intense weight. Let's make sure we're moving well at the end. Once we have completed our strength phase, we will move on to the power phase. Power is essentially how fast can you be strong. As a strength and conditioning coach, this is what really fires me up, because ultimately stronger athletes are better athletes because they can produce more force in a shorter period of time, which means they are a more explosive athlete. To this point, through our work capacity and our strength phases, we have built our engine. We are strong and we are confident based on the work that we have done to this point. Now, as we move to the power phase, we're going to become more efficient, powerful, faster movers. An example of this is motor unit recruitment. And I look at motor unit recruitment as the high striker game at a carnival or a fair. You walk up to that thing and you are strong, you're powerful, you're confident. You take that sledgehammer and you smack that lever on the ground. It shoots up, lights up the beam, lights it up nice and high for everyone. And that is our body being efficient and recruiting those motor neurons and being fast and powerful and efficient in everything that we do. That is our goal in the power phase, to help us reach the top of that high striker. Now, here's what a program in the power phase may look like. Once again, referring to this chart, as we shift to the power phase, our intensity, our effort may be going up, so our volume of work may be going down as well. We will still keep our core work in the front. We are now up on our feet, whether it is 2 feet on the ground or a single leg stance, a split stance position, given what the exercise selection may be. We will superset front squats with a tuck jump for our plyo and an upper body pull. front squats. We are still working in that 3 sets of 5, that 4 sets of 5 range. However, because we are going for power during this phase, our intensity or our weight on the bar is dropping. So we may be working in that range of 60%, 50% of a max, essentially leaving plenty in the tank to make sure that we are moving each and every single rep fast and powerful and smooth. We will superset this with a plyometric to use as a post-activation potentiation effect to superset that main movement to be powerful moving through space while hitting some upper body work to support that. Our next block, we've done some supported RDLs with a reverse grip and our band supported work. Now we are confident with our movement capabilities, our movement quality. We're just going to move some weight on that. And again, moving powerfully through space. Our dumbbell incline bench press is combined with a medicine ball slam, medicine ball work to support that upper body movement and being powerful rotationally with that medicine ball. Our third block, we've done isometrics, we've done step ups, and now we're going to advance even further. Examples could be step up to reverse lunge, weighted TRX rows, because we have done isometric TRX rows, we have done traditional TRX rows. Maybe now we are stronger and we can ramp up the intensity a little bit more with some of those movements. So overall, with the power program, we have added plyometrics, whether that is upper body or lower body. We have lowered the weight that we are using for our main lifts. However, we are moving fast, we are moving clean, and we are moving under control and powerfully through everything that we do. Putting it all together, here are the 3 phases side by side. We have our work capacity on the left, our base of our pyramid that we will work from, our strength, which is our middle phase that allows us to build the engine, and our power phase at the very top of the pyramid, which is us being super efficient and powerful with all of our movements. In our core, we see a progression from tall kneeling to half kneeling to standing and split stance. With our medicine ball work, we see something similar as well, where we will go tall kneeling to half kneeling to standing to moving dynamically through space. Our squat progression, we will go from a squat to a front, working with the volume on the goblet squat up to more intense weight being moved in the front squat to eventually shifting some weight down, shifting our gears down, and moving fast and powerful with our front squat. We'll mix in some plyometrics at the end with our power phase. We will progress our RDL to have a very good hinge to be able to get into our hinge positions, whether it is on the mound or in the batter's box or when fielding a ground ball, getting into our ready position defensively with our reverse grip RDL to our band supported RDL to eventually a free flowing RDL. We have isometrics early in the work capacity phase to support joint health and less wear and tear, along with tissue health in certain positions that we may meet athletically on the field of play. We will then start moving through space with our step ups, with our TRX rows, and then being more dynamic with those movements for a step up to a reverse lunge and a weighted TRX row. Now, this is not a be-all, end-all by any means of what a program is. However, it is a sound example of what it could be when we're looking to become a stronger athlete, to support our talent and develop it into skill, to have a larger, more robust capacity to train, to practice, to be a better baseball player. The last thing I want to touch on today is a sound squat progression. Instead of just loading up a bar and getting underneath it and trying to move in a squat pattern, let's have a safe and effective progression to get to that point so we can truly develop lower body strength. As the great Herb Brooks once said in the timeless movie Miracle about our U.S. Olympic hockey team winning gold medal in the 1980s, legs feed the wolves. And with my history coming up as a young strength coach, training strongmen, training powerlifters, I do believe there's an effective way to build that lower body strength through the entire range of motion. And we're going to look at a goblet squat, a kettlebell front rack squat, a Frankenstein squat, eventually into a front squat and a back squat if that fits your program. So our first exercise is a goblet squat. I like to teach this: grab a kettlebell, grab a dumbbell with both hands, squeeze your elbows together so we're bracing all the way through our core, feet about shoulder width apart with toes a little bit externally rotated, and control that weight on the way down. Squat down, touch your elbows to your knees, and get up out of the hole. Once we feel we have moved enough weight, created enough volume, created enough resiliency there, we'll move on to our kettlebell front rack squat. This way we're using two separate weights, a little bit more stability through the core. We may be able to load up a little bit more weight, and same thing, nice, slow, and controlled. We push our butt back, we lower into the hole, touch our elbows to our knee, get up out of it. Once we have shown sufficient movement quality there, I like to move on to a Frankenstein squat. This is a great example of what that could look like here. We have both arms straight out in front, thumbs pointed to the sky to create a crease across our shoulders that the bar can rest in, and we want to keep those arms locked out, keep our core strong and braced, or else we're going to lose the bar. So keeping those arms straight, same thing we did with the goblet squat, same thing we did with the kettlebell front rack. We'd lower ourselves into the hole and we get up out of it, maintaining that elite posture. From there, progress to a front squat. You can go a cross grip with hands crossed over the shoulders, or you can go a front rack grip like you would in Olympic lifting with your cleans. Really personal preference and what a player is able to do given some of their upper extremity flexibility and range of motions that they can get into. After that, if you so choose, get into a back squat. It's more traditional powerlifting, football, strongman, etc. But this is a basic squat progression that I like to teach athletes, especially when I first get my hands on young athletes, so that we can truly build lower body strength and power in a safe and effective manner. I want to thank you all for joining me on a Saturday to listen to a strength coach talk about some strength and power development for baseball players. Thank you to the PBSCCS for hosting this event. If you get a chance, check out their website. A lot of great tools that can help develop baseball players. If you want to find me and talk more, I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I really don't post anything, but I will respond to messages, so feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk shop, happy to provide any guidance if you feel it's welcome. The last two things I want to share: SFG Productions, our media team, they've done a great job over the last couple off seasons of highlighting some of our off-season camps in San Francisco. It's a really cool perspective of how our players get after it in the off season. Use some of what we shared today, and you can also see our coaches working well with the players, with the staff, to put these players in a great position to go out and have success, really develop physically and tap into those tools and develop some elite skills.
Hello, everyone. Thank you to the PBSCCS for having me on today. I'm very excited to talk to you all. As I mentioned, I'm a performance chef and dietitian with the Dodgers. I have a little bit of experience cooking for NBA and soccer as well. I actually started off my journey as a pastry chef, so definitely made some changes throughout my career. I'm very happy to be where I'm at. Today, I'll be walking you through how culinary strategy, food psychology, and nutrition science all come together to support elite performance. These are our objectives, designed to give you actionable insights into how culinary and nutrition practices intersect to boost athlete performance. Balancing culinary and nutritional responsibilities is crucial. My role blends both of these areas to ensure meals are both performance-driven and enjoyable. We know about how important dietitians are in the sports space, but what about in the kitchen? Each position wears many hats. Chefs spend their days concerned about food preparation, ordering, menu planning, how much to cook, what we need to cook, are they going to enjoy what we cook, and what do we need to cook tomorrow? It's all a lot of cooking, and dietitians spend their days planning how to make nutrition part of athletes' everyday life. They have their hands in everything from doing DEXA scans to consulting with athletes, stocking and serving fueling stations, and planning the future for their program. Many responsibilities that we share in common are staff management and menu planning. We both have to worry about food and about the people running their department. It may seem like a small part of it all, but it's huge. Your people will help you execute your visions, and no nutrition program is worth its weight if your athletes aren't eating their meals or supplemental foods. For those of you who were able to attend winter meetings, Alan Tran gave a wonderful presentation about the art and science of making high performance food delicious. All in all, we are hoping to change the landscape and bring in more chef dietitians to work with our teams, to collaborate with dietitians on our teams, our strength and conditioning coaches, medical teams, and coaches in general. Our job isn't just cooking, it's about helping athletes eat more consistently by making food that looks and tastes great. Now, these are some tools that we use in our kitchen, such as batch cooking to keep food fresh and appetizing. I know in our minor leagues or just other maybe youth programs, food is put out and it's left there for hours. And that's a major problem when someone's not watching the food. You can use simple tips such as just turning the food underneath the heat lamp, because the heat lamp is going to dry the food out. Maybe you add a little bit of sauce to the pan or a little bit of water to the pan, or we're covering food to keep it moist. Dry food does not look appetizing. You can use flavors to enhance and build flavor for foods, acid to mimic salt without overusing sodium, utilizing herbs and spices to add color and appeal. Here are my favorite flavor boosting alternatives that you can use. Boring food is out. I know many of you have probably grown up or maybe started your careers eating boiled chicken breast, overcooked vegetables, and you're just tired and bored of eating boring food. Food does not have to be boring. Exciting food gets you and your athletes excited about good nutrition. These are my favorite chef level tips to enhance flavor without relying on added salt or sugar, both for culinary creativity and athlete friendly meals. Just the other day, we ended up with a batch of bitter Brussels sprouts, and we're like, okay, how can we counteract this bitterness without having to toss the entire pan? Let's make an apple cider reduction. Let's take the apple cider, reduce it down, make it nice and sweet, and add it in. Well, our apple cider was not sweet, it was sour, which became a problem. But sour, tart apple cider is going to counteract the bitter flavor of Brussels sprouts. So we created something that worked really well. Same thing with guacamole. Lime juice is great, but if you really want to brighten that flavor, let's add something like lemon juice. Roasted cauliflower is awesome, but it tends to be a little bit white and bland, and maybe you get that nice roasting. But what if we had turmeric? What if we had paprika? What if we had chimichurri? All of those colors create for a beautiful, appetizing dish. I'm very happy to say that I've been successful with getting our players to eat their vegetables just by using a lot of these cooking techniques listed here. It's important to accommodate dietary restrictions and preferences in our clubhouse and for your athletes. They want to feel like they're at home. It's important to incorporate international dishes to support cultural diversity. Where we work, we are supported by sushi chefs every now and then, local Latin catering. It's important to talk to your athletes. Where are they eating? Who's cooking for them? Are there any recipes they can share with you? Are there any cookbooks that they can share? Use your resources. We want our athletes to feel supported and valued. Now, here's the realities of a kitchen. Adaptability as a performance skill. What you see is a seamless meal service. Hot, fresh food on time, staff is working calmly. That's not the reality. There are no smooth days. Something always breaks. Flexibility is part of the performance strategy, and the real skill is to solve issues before anyone notices. Eric Yavarone, if you're on here, you know more than anyone, along with Brandon McDaniel and Travis Smith, that things go down every day, but they're seeing it. We don't want anyone else to see what's going on. We don't want our players to know that our delivery showed up late, items are missing, something's spoiled, and our next meal needs to be out in 2 hours. We're going to course correct and figure out a plan that works. There are last-minute ingredient substitutions, equipment malfunctions, and of course, the pitch clock, which has created for a very fast game. But our goal is to make it work and create a space where you feel welcomed and happy and excited about the food that is there and present and ready for you. Designing the fueling environment. We know almost everyone's routine, what they like, what they don't like, what products are moving, and what aren't. And we use a little bit of food psychology to affect fueling behaviors and patterns. Let's hide the candies. Let's put fruit in the forefront. Let's put some of the things that we want them to consume at eye level. When you show up to the hotline, you're seeing fruit, you're seeing vegetables, because we want you to build your plate around what's first. Let's put the vegetables first, then we'll put the carbohydrates, and then we'll put the meat. So you can build your plate consciously about nutrition. Our goal is to strategically influence choices subconsciously without them knowing. There are times when, let's say, we all work in baseball, so we know there was a lot of superstition. If a coffee brand gets hot, everyone's drinking it. Last year, we were on one specific type of coffee brand, and every time we won, or maybe before a game, that's what we were drinking. Okay, well, maybe we lose. We're going to change it up this year. We see it with sparkling water, with food items. It's just a thing. So we try and use these techniques to affect fueling habits. Collaborations behind the majors. When we're cooking, we can lose track of what's going on. Who's up in weight? Who's down? How can we help? Communication and collaboration is crucial. We work very closely with our strength and conditioning staff and medical staff to fill us in on what's going on, what we're missing when we're in the kitchen. And the minors, the same thing. Our strength coaches help bridge the gap, bridge the nutrition gap, and I help support them and the chefs who work for our outside catering companies by sharing practical strategies and ideas. It's very difficult when you're cooking for a long season. You get tired of making the same food. So a lot of the times I'm working with our affiliate chefs and sharing ideas and menu inspiration so that we can keep things exciting. It's important that we check in with our affiliate strength coaches because we're not there full time, who are there to offer day-to-day nutrition support for our players, and also just reach out and ask us about what tips they can share with their athletes. So maybe that's we're creating Instagram posts or easily digestible content because our younger athletes are always on their phones. Let's look for ways where we can educate. Well, at the end of the day, we're all focused on the same goal, which is supporting our athletes. This is a little bit of a tricky diagram, but this is my best way of displaying our horizontal flow. Fueling prep before the season starts. This is where myself and my colleague Tyrone Hall, step outside of the kitchen and we're doing full dietitian work. We're reviewing labs, supplements, and fueling routines. We're sitting down and having those one-on-one conversations because when the season starts, we're full on chef mode and our job changes a little bit. We are laying the groundwork for season-long success, and we're also collaborating on menus with our catering company that's on site. It's a key time for us to reset and prepare for the season. As you can see in the picture, for those of you who are tuning in on the computers, we are sitting down during physicals, getting our intake questions done and kind of working on building that foundation. And we also do things like preparing supplements for our international trip. Education through the kitchen. So you're probably wondering, when do you have time to sit down and talk with players? We do, but conversations often happen in the moment. Our kitchen is open, so this becomes an opportunity. Most nutrition happens while plating or chatting on the line, and those moments stick. Hey, Kristen, is this enough potatoes for me to eat? Should I pull back on this? How many ounces of meat is this? How much should I be eating? So these conversations happen informally, and that opens the opportunity for education, for motivational interviewing. This setup leads to more authentic conversations that helps players get nutrition information in real time. For us in this situation, practical education is greater than formal sessions. And in the sports space, it's the same for dietitians around the league. We're often having these conversations on the fly in the bullpen in the dining lounge, wherever we have the opportunity. Now, Emily talked a lot about this and gave great recommendations for fueling pre, post, and the day before games. So I will keep this light. But what we have found that I would like you all to use as a guide is the build your own bowl fueling strategy. This concept is inspired by both Chipotle and Cava, where a lot of our athletes, especially our young athletes, dine often because they are affordable, quick, portable, balanced, and convenient. It's important that we build our base around greens and grains, add your protein, add vegetables and color, and then top it all off with maybe something crunchy, a sauce, dressings, toppings. It presents options in a way that's both appealing and practical. They want something that's fast, familiar, and customizable. They don't want to sit and cut their food. If everything's chopped and ready to go, they can build their bowl and be on their way. Easy nutrition, fast nutrition is what works. So part of my goal with this slide was to make items that sound both exciting and easy to use, because I can tell you to eat turkey and hummus, or I can tell you to go make a smoothie, or maybe have some chicken breast and pasta, but how do we make it exciting? Let's use words, let's use flavors, let's use cooking techniques to make things sound exciting. Let's have a chicken pesto pasta with blistered cherry tomatoes and shaved Parmesan, honey ginger salmon with jasmine rice and roasted broccoli. Using those key words make things sound a lot more appetizing. Grilled chicken shawarma bowl with turmeric rice, cucumber tomato salad, and tahini drizzle. You're thinking of a perfectly browned chicken breast with yellow rice, the greens from the cucumber, the red from the tomatoes, and the tahini drizzle on top. You eat with your eyes. It's important to make food sound exciting. And these are all simple meals. You're using your basic protein, your basic carb, and a vegetable and a sauce. So using that recipe that I gave you for Build a Bowl and turning it into something that's exciting. Key takeaways from this presentation. Food is more than fuel. It's behavior, it's culture, and trust. And when we're intentional with how we cook and present food, we create better outcomes. When we work across disciplines with chefs, coaches, and medical staff, we can really support athletes in meaningful ways. The right food offered at the right time becomes a tool for consistency, recovery, and trust. I'll leave you with this. Everything we do with food is part of the strategy. From prep to presentation, it's all designed to support performance. You don't need fancy recipes, just thoughtful execution. These are some of my favorite texts I have used since I started my career, and I continue to pick up throughout my career now. Cooking is a skill that can lead to both personal and professional fulfillment, offering a creative outlet, financial independence, and a way to connect with others through food. I highly recommend just trying to cook or teaching your athletes how to cook. The off season can be a challenge for a lot. That's when we see a lot of weight gain. Maybe they're choosing those unfavorable fast food places, or just eating food that's convenient, that's not really the best for them. Or maybe they don't have someone to cook for them at home, or they don't know how to cook themselves. These are some texts I'd like to share with you all to learn how to cook, to share with your athletes to learn how to cook as well. So that's all I got for you all. I know it was faster than I anticipated, so I'm sorry if I went a little fast, but I will be present for the Q&A at the end of the day if anyone has any questions. And if not, please feel free to email me. I have many resources that I would love to share with you all. Thank you.
Kristen, can you talk a little bit about allergies and food allergies and how you go about getting that information from the players you work with, and then I guess taking it to your teams and catering the meals to the player? Because that's even at the amateur level now, you know, the nut allergies, and our kids take treats to school and things like that. So how do you one, get that information, and two, circumvent around it?
Acquiring allergy information is one of the first questions that we ask a player. A lot of times we're finding out during physicals. Medical will share that information with us because they were also asking about it. It is also one of the first questions we ask when a player shows up to our clubhouse for the first time. Hey, nice to meet you. Welcome in. Do you have any food allergies or intolerances that we should be aware of? It's important to get that information as soon as possible so that you can plan and prepare for it. Now, we don't see a lot of food allergies, but we do try and accommodate by way of, let's say, somebody has a dairy intolerance. Okay, well, we'll make a small batch of dairy-free potatoes. Or maybe someone is gluten-free. When we do our crispy chicken, that is a panko crusted crispy chicken, let's make them a gluten-free crusted chicken. So meeting the player, providing for the player that makes them feel special and cared for without them feeling like they are a hassle. Sometimes this will need to use resources if we don't know how to make something. And then once we utilize that resource, we have that recipe and we can customize it for menus down the line.
Thank you. Another question for you, air fryer. So we have sounds like a youth baseball coach that, you know, the kids like French fries, and are they able to make a healthier French fry using an air fryer compared to conventional, the grease and fryer method?
I do think that using an air fryer or simply just oven baked is better than using a fryer. I think it's important to consider what we're using on the potatoes. Are you using a ton of oil? Are you using butter? What are you dipping the fry in? So paying attention to those things rather than just the potato itself, because a roasted potato is a roasted potato. If you're just cutting up a potato and maybe throwing a little bit of olive oil on it, then you're fine. So are you dipping it in a ton of ketchup after? Are you dipping it in a full fat sauce? So I pay more attention to those things, but absolutely, air fryer is a great way to get in some quality nutrition while saving on some or saving the unhealthy cooking for air fryers.
I remember when I was with the Pirates, they had the convection oven in the commercial kitchen, and the chef Tony was like, Frank, yeah, these are healthy fries, these are healthy wings. And I'm like, okay, I'll take
What
your
do you
word.
mean?
Right. But no, that's great. Something to consider is, what are you putting on it? What are you putting on the
Yes.
food? So to that point, is olive oil, in your opinion, the best oil to cook with in the home and of course for your teams?
You know what? I am going to leave that up to the consumer to decide what they'd want to cook with, because there is a lot of controversy around oils, what oils to use. My personal favorite is olive oil or avocado oil, but I think it's totally up to the consumer.
Good answer. And then this is kind of we have another question come through, but I'll ask this one first. What has been your most outlandish request from a player for food to prepare for them? Anything way off the beaten path over the years?
That's a good one. I honestly, we've made so much food at this point that nothing seems crazy anymore. Um, I mean, I know that we had a player one time, and this is also something that we like to gather when we're meeting a player, like, what do you like to eat? Where have you eaten? What did you eat this off season that was really exciting? How can we replicate that and bring it into our clubhouse? Something that we typically don't make that we did make for this player and for the rest of the team was catfish. We looked at myself and Tyrone looked at one another like, we're gonna make catfish right now? But we did, and it went over really well. But to me, that's not outlandish. I'll get back to you on that because I can't think of anything right now that was too crazy.
And being part of the WBCs in the past, and I know when all the teams come together in Miami, we work with Dave Ellis with the Joint Committee, and a big challenge. And I'm going to ask you this question: how much of a challenge is it to get regional foods for the Asian, the Dominican, your Latin American, you're from the United States, from the West Coast down south, and take all that and blend it into one clubhouse so you're satisfying all needs for every meal?
It's a challenge, and it's it's hard to do it for every single meal. I can share personal examples of what we do in our clubhouse. For example, our rice cooker. We spoke with our Japanese athletes, what type of rice do you like to eat? So we started buying Japanese rice that's in the rice cooker all day long. That way they can build their meals based on what they like to eat. They're kind of taken care of in that aspect. We like to serve Latin food every Saturday, or every Saturday for lunch, or maybe another meal is Latin inspired while also providing non-Latin items so that everyone is not tied into that one type of cuisine. It's important that you're meeting with these athletes and talking to them about where they're eating out, because that gives us the resources we need to talk to these caterers, to look for caterers, and also cookbooks as well. I know when Albert Pujols was with us, he gave us a couple of cookbooks that we could use to make authentic Dominican recipes, and we have used those recipes over and over so that we can introduce some of those new food items in our clubhouse. Now, in the minor leagues, it can be a challenge, especially when you're working with chefs who don't have a lot of knowledge about authentic, maybe Dominican cuisine. A lot of times people think all Latin food is spicy. That's not the case. And that's a common issue that we're starting to see. So talking with these chefs, seeing if we could share recipes with them, and also not being afraid to cater out every now and then. If money's a challenge, use your resources. All we can do is learn.
True that. Okay, another question from one of our MLB brethren that is out of the game now, like myself and Matt. How do you, in what ways, do you keep the menu creative to avoid redundancy over the course of 81 home ball games?
I would love to hear, Brandon, if you'd like to speak up for this one, because I think it's great. No, but a lot of the time it's challenging, especially when we get to July and August and September, when everyone's tired and they're just wearing it and everything sounds the same. We like to tell people there are no new proteins, no new carbs that we know of, and no new vegetables. The best that we can do is try and change things up. So one of the ways we used a little bit of psychology was every Tuesday for post-batting practice meal, we were doing Taco Tuesday. One of those times we stopped. We did not do a Taco Tuesday. We did something different. People were like, where are the tacos? I was expecting Taco Tuesday, but our
Right.
goal is to put something equally exciting so that they didn't expect. When you start to do the same things every day, you're creating that expectation, which becomes boring over time. So changing the menu up every single homestand. If they just had a ton of pizza in Chicago on the road, let's not do pizza this homestand. So working based on the menus that we provide on the road kind of changes what we do in our home clubhouse, and also talking to players like, hey, what do you really want to see this homestand? Like, what would you really like to eat? What's going to make you excited? And then gathering feedback is a huge, huge thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, most organizations, most teams at that level have like a leader committee
Yes.
within the organizations or the teams, and they will speak for the team, and that helps because that gives them play and say and what's going on in the kitchen.
Absolutely.
So, and I
And your
know,
players, go ahead.
no, please.
Your players are spending a lot of time with your strength and conditioning staff and your medical staff, and they're going to talk to them the most. And every meal that we make is not going to be a hit. That's just the reality. We're humans, we make mistakes, we mess things up. Maybe we oversalted something or underseasoned something. Talk to the strength and conditioning staff, talk to medical, talk to your players, and share that information with your kitchen. Because we can put a meal out every single day thinking that it was incredible. And then the next day we hear like, oh, I really didn't like that, or that tasted off. We need to know that information so that we can correct it and be better next time.
That's right. I mean, the years I spent in the game, and I think everyone, my guys, strength coaches and athletic trainers, those rooms are the unbiased rooms in that clubhouse, and they will share more with your strength coaches and athletic trainers, and because they're with the team every day, and sometimes our sports RDs and our team mental skills coaches are not with the team every day, so they'll share and grow that that trust with those positions. And like you said, it's important for us to pass that on because we're all part of the same performance team,
Absolutely.
pulling on the same end of the rope. I mean, the information that you and Emily have provided today on nutrition has been outstanding. I think from the top, and it relates all the way down to our families. Now that I've been out of the game for over a decade, and just these kids need it just as much, if not more. The athletes of all sports, that number one, that they're being fed and fueling enough, and what they're using for fuel with energy drinks and our pre-workouts that are out there, and they're at the front of the gas station and they're all dressed up in these shiny and cool names and shiny cans. They really market to that teenage generation. So getting them to understand that carbohydrates is the fuel of choice, and then having them eat enough protein. Most don't eat enough protein, and most are not hydrated enough. So these tips have been great, and you guys you do a knockout job, and I'm really excited about the organization that is now recognized at the major league level with our sports RDs. So again, making strides, and to go along with the athletic trainers and the strength coaches, and now our chiropractors and sports RDs, and it's really for the betterment of the game. So
Thank you.
thanks so much for coming on. Great answers to the questions. Great presentation. Matt.
Good afternoon, everybody. Hope everybody is enjoying the webinar today. Hope everybody's got a lot out of the information presented by the previous speakers. I know a lot of work went into that, so great job, everybody, on that. I want to take a few more minutes, close this out. We're going to talk about kind of a large topic, which is isometric training for baseball players. It's a method that is widely used and has a lot of potential applications. And we're going to try to whittle it down to some of the basics and give some practical applications for how you can use isometric training within your environment, your setting, with your baseball athletes. So I'm Jeff Dolan. I'm the minor league strength and conditioning coordinator for the Detroit Tigers. This is my second year there. I have experience with several other organizations, Red Sox, Phoenix Suns, worked college baseball at Illinois, and started my career, which is increasingly becoming a longer and longer time that has passed since then. I increasingly find myself getting a little bit older, which is a little bit sad, but that's okay. Started with the Yankees in 2015. Wanted to give a special thank you to all the PBSCCS members, all the leadership team for putting these types of events together. They are a great resource for everyone who is able to access them. So great work, guys. Like I said, started with the Yankees a long time ago, so I have to give a special shout out to Matt Krause. Without Krause hiring me, I would not be where I am today. So Krause, thank you for that, and thank you for dragging me on here to present to all you guys on the topic here. The disclaimer, the views are my own. I'm not necessarily saying this is what the Tigers do, this is the Tigers playbook, but kind of going over the concepts and how they can be applied to your situation, as well as how I can apply them to mine. So, like I said, big topic. We could talk about isometrics for a long time, and a lot of people have. So I just want to give a brief overview of what the methodology is, talk a little bit about how we can use it to improve strength and power in our athletes, talk about some physiological rationale that we may use this type of training, and then get into a little bit of the practical application of how we can do it, which I think is where the real meat is at. And the applications are incredibly wide. So I wanted to hone it in a little bit, and we're going to talk about some example templates and some ways that we can use it for pitching specific training. always try to rest on key principles, and we're going to put this here and we're going to refer to it again later in the presentation. But when we design any sort of training intervention, any sort of physical development program, we need to keep in mind that these interventions, these adaptations that we create in our athletes need to eventually be reflected in the context of the game. There needs to be a transfer of training. Now, depending on the level of your athlete, their needs, their limiting factors, the type of training and the type of interventions and the type of adaptations that we're trying to create may vary based off of where they are currently at. So we need to determine what the best application of training to create that desired transfer of training effect will be for any given athlete at any given time. So with that being said, let's launch into ISOs, what they are. I know ISOs have been around basically forever. They're a very simple, very beautiful methodology of training. And there's a number of different applications and different ways to do them, but essentially from a general standpoint, what is an isometric? It's just a static muscular contraction where the joint does not move. So the force production is equivalent to the load, meaning that if the force production exceeds the load, then we will lift the weight concentrically. If the load exceeds the force production capacity, then we will see more of an eccentric contraction where we cannot overcome that load. Now, in ISO, where there's no motion happening, that doesn't mean that the muscles are not active, obviously. And in fact, the muscles are actually contracting and relaxing at incredibly high speed. So it is a high speed method of training, even though there is no speed that you can see. There are two kind of general subcategories of ISOs. So the first one is a yielding isometric. In the scientific literature, it's referred to as holding isometric muscle action, so HEMA. And basically that's just trying to hold a position and fighting against gravity. So best example would be a classic physical education class, wall sit. Muscles are incredibly active, you get fatigued, you feel that burn in your lower half, but you're just holding it there. So from a neuromuscular standpoint, it actually maps in the brain as an eccentric action because we are technically getting a little bit of lengthening as we fight gravity. We just don't perceive that unless you start to fail, in which case you'll start dropping and get the actual eccentric contraction. These are sometimes called eccentric quasi-isometrics. So that speaks to this principle of it's not actually isometric because there is a little bit of movement. It's just that we can't see it. The other subcategory would be the pushing isometrics, PIMA, or overcoming isometrics as they're often referred to. This is basically you're driving into an unmovable resistance or something that you cannot lift concentrically. So your squats, for example, into pins. This allows you to create an incredible amount of muscle recruitment, but it is much safer than actually having to lift because it takes a lot of the skill of the lift out of the equation. And neuromuscularly, this is a similar path to a concentric movement because the muscles are actively trying to shorten. The brain is producing force with that intent. It's just that you are not able to overcome the load that immovable object is providing. Some different ways we can apply this. There is a ramping strategy where you kind of gradually build up, build up, build up, build up, and hit your max or whatever intent that you are aiming to get to. And there's more of a ballistic where you would quickly produce the tension. So there are different applications of that method as well. So what are some advantages to utilizing isometrics? First one would be versatility. You can train multiple training qualities. Obviously, we went over that there's different applications of the methodology. We can use it to target movement quality. We can use it to target strength. We can use it to work on tissue resilience. There's even a conditioning effect that we could get from using some of these methodologies. So incredibly versatile, and it's going to be accessible to everyone because oftentimes there's minimal equipment that's required. These are the sorts of methods that you could easily use if you were, let's say, training a youth team at the field. You don't have to bring a squat rack out there to do long duration isometric split squat holds or something to that effect. And then it's a very efficient method of training. You can kill a number of birds with one stone because there are potential applications of merging physical development with skill acquisition, merging physical development with training more for health outcomes. So it is an incredibly advantageous methodology of training. Let's get a little bit into the physiological rationale for why we might use it. So baseball is kind of a weird sport. It is a highly skill-dependent game, as we know. And whereas in, let's say, American football, there are certain typical body types that succeed in certain sports. Baseball, you see players of all shapes, all sizes that are playing the same game. So what are the physical qualities that allow us to succeed in this sport? And it's not simply bigger, faster, stronger. Something I always like to say is that even though Arnold looked great, man, look at those buys, the Austrian oak, legendary chest. That guy was big, strong, but I promise you, I can guarantee you, he never threw a ball very hard. So contrast him with my friend Chris over here, one of the best pitchers on the planet, Cy Young Award winner last year. Chris is legitimately 6'6" and probably 170 something pounds on any given day. Chris is not a big, strong dude per se. But why is he able to throw a fastball in the high 90s? That's a great question. And I think a lot of the reason comes from his ability to harness his myofascial system and his ability to sequence time and transfer energy elastically throughout his entire system to deliver force effectively into the ball at ball release. So a traditional bigger, stronger, faster approach to training neglects certain aspects that lead to success when pitching and hitting, including kind of the specific coordination of that skill, the ability to create co-contractions and elite timing and sequencing of the movement, and the ability to utilize the elastic components of the fascial system and connective tissues to create more whippy force as opposed to muscular force. As Franz Bosch likes to say, using muscle for elastic actions differs greatly from using them for concentric actions. So Stephen Jones likes to say that the focus on concentric lifting of weights can actually be counterproductive for elastic athletes. So what are we talking about when we're talking about the myofascial system? So the myofascial system, or fascia, is a body-wide global system of connective tissue that both envelops our muscular system and also flows within it. So it cannot be necessarily removed or isolated from the muscular system, but it does connect everything. So Thomas Myers likes to say that we have one muscle with a bunch of different compartments, which we traditionally think of as a bicep, as a pec major, as a rectus femoris. But really, they are all connected and they all work together to manage forces and manage tension across the system as a whole, which is where the biotensegrity model comes from. Basically, it's an architectural concept that, when applied to the body, refers to the skeleton, the bones, as compressive elements that are suspended, and they're connected with the tensional elements, which are the fascial components. So not only does this help us distribute and transfer stress and force throughout the system, but we can utilize that to enhance our athletic performance, particularly in a total body explosive, highly coordinated and sequenced, nuanced motion like throwing or swinging. I know we typically have been trained and educated to think of force transmission as being muscle to tendon to bone to move the skeleton. But interestingly, there's a lot of force transfer that happens between muscles that are side to side via fascial connections between them. And this study from 2007 actually found that 40% of contraction force is not via that kind of linear approach, muscle, tendon, bone. It actually comes outwards and spreads upwards and around. 40% is pretty significant. So something that we need to keep in mind when we approach the training of our athletes that do what they do on the baseball field. If we think about the role of the muscles within that fascial force transmission process, the bowstring is actually a good metaphor here. So if we have a good, strong, stiff bow, we can get more elastic rebound from the bowstring as we release the arrow. If we have more of a floppy, inefficient bow, we won't get that same energy transfer coming out. So there has to be a little bit of give, but it can't be too much. The stiffness that's provided by the musculature allows the athlete to harness the elasticity of the connective tissue when they move explosively. So if we have a muscle that can maintain an isometric contraction, to not lengthen under stress, lengthen under speed, lengthen under tension, we can allow the lengthening to happen in the elastic components of the system, fascia, tendons, other connective tissue elements. That will then allow for the stretch shortening cycle and the rebound of energy from the elastic components to contribute to explosive performance, and not have to rely on the lengthening and shortening of the musculature, which is a more energy expensive and less efficient process. Bosch talks about this a lot, and reiterates that same point. If the connective or the contractile elements, the muscles themselves, are able to remain isometric, it allows for the series elastic components, the parallel elastic components, to do their thing, to lengthen and to shorten, and to create a catapult effect via the physical properties of those types of tissues. Now, as we know, baseball is a sport that requires explosive performance. It is not a sport where you have time when you execute the technical skills to ramp up as much force as possible. Basically, powerlifting is kind of the only sport where you have unlimited time to reach your maximum force production. So therefore, the rate of force development is the key aspect, the key neuromuscular aspect of performance, since time is limited. So it's the athlete who can reach their highest force as they can in the shortest possible amount of time that is going to be able to succeed within the confines of a time limited task, such as throwing or especially hitting. So one key concept to talk about when we think about rate of force development and things that may limit rate of force development is the concept of muscle slack, which has been popularized by Bosch, there he is again, and his buddy Van Hoeren. They do research together somewhere in the Netherlands, I believe. So what is muscle slack? Essentially, when a muscle is at rest, it's not just ready to rip, not ready to go. It actually hangs a little slack. So in order for it to contract, there's a little bit of time called the electromechanical delay, where the athlete needs to create enough tension to get the fibers to line up so that they can then contract. So I stole this little diagram from Randy Sullivan at Florida Baseball Armory, who's a great baseball mind, and he applies these concepts, I think, almost better than anybody. But let's say I'm trying to pull this car. In order for me to create enough tension to get this thing rolling, I can't have slack in the line that I'm using to pull it. I need to have enough tension so that I can then ramp up the force to pull the car, and muscles work in much the same way. So what are some ways that we can improve our ability to remove this slack so that we can ultimately get to the movement faster? And there's a number of strategies that the body uses. One would be creating a co-contraction. What is a co-contraction? Co-contraction is simply a contraction of both agonist and antagonist muscles, which can take up that muscle slack and allow for a more efficient process of stretching the elastic components that contribute to the movement. So we get a contraction on both sides of a joint, and then once the antagonist releases, then we get a quick shortening of musculature and a catapult rebound of the elastic components. So a co-contraction is simply an isometric contraction. It's everything around the joint firing together, just as it would if you were doing an isometric hold on the wall. The key to performance is being able to sequence those co-contractions in a precise order and timing, which allows for transfer of force to be maximized and energy leaks along the way to be minimized. So one way we can train the ability to create co-contractions effectively, and therefore the ability to create rate of force development effectively, is by doing isometric training. So let's get into the good stuff. Like I said, we are going to focus the application piece of this just on how you might train a pitcher to create some of these co-contractions and allow for expression of force, rate of force, and specific application of force and strength within the context of the pitching motion. Returning to principles before we hop into examples. Like I mentioned before at the outset, we have to make sure that training transfers to what we're trying to accomplish. I always try to sneak pictures of Arnold into my presentations wherever I can. So there he is again, looking good. I continuously come back to stealing this quote from Bobby Stroop, who likes to say that strength is an expression, not a measurement. So everybody knows Arnold, big and strong, can move a lot of weight, carries a ton of musculature. We know he's strong. We think of him as strong. This ballerina gal right here, we can probably assume that she doesn't exactly lift the house. She's probably not a force production monster from a weight room traditional lifting standpoint. But she can express strength, power, force incredibly effectively within the context of her activity, which is dancing. I promise you, we have however many professional athletes in our org, 165 in the minor leagues. I promise nobody could hit that position. So that is an expression of strength, even though she may not be able to squat a whole bunch of weight. So we can map out our different styles of training along a continuum from general to specific. The general being more of the traditional weight room, increase force development, increase muscle hypertrophy cross-sectional area to improve the contractile abilities of the musculature. We can then move to more of a special strength, power development, rate of force development via more traditional means, and eventually end up on the more specific side, which utilizes the speed and coordination demands of game-like movements and combines it with that force and power expression in order to ensure that transfer of training. Isometrics are a really cool methodology because we can use the same type of training, isometrics, to train all these different qualities. So from a general standpoint, that may look like the more traditional isometric methods that we talked about at the outset, long duration yielding isometrics where you're holding a position, some of the more overcoming output-based IMTP type of things. We can figure out ways to apply isometrics in more specific positions, and we can also get to the more specific application of the training where we can utilize isometric contractions, mostly co-contraction training in game-like movements. What are some of these positions that we might want to look at? Again, here comes Randy Sullivan. At one point, he referred to these as attractor states in pitching, so he has since changed the term to indicators. But basically, we're looking for key positions in the delivery that, no matter what your style, are mechanically going to be similar and are going to be large contributors to success in the movement. So at these key indicator points in the delivery, we need to create co-contraction to create stability within that part of the movement. For today's purposes, we're going to talk about 3 key indicators movement-wise. First one being the loading of the back hip. As we know from this McWilliams study, the push-off forces and the ability to create force, ground reaction force down from the ground up through the system to generate linear momentum is a key determinant of velocity. The lead leg block, we know we need to stop and brake effectively to transfer that energy up through the system that we've created by the ground reaction force from the impulse of the back leg, and also from the momentum that we get from going down the mound. And we know from these 2 studies that there's a correlation between braking force on the front side and fastball velocity with the output. And then that energy that comes from the ground, we need to make sure that it effectively gets transferred and transmitted through the torso up into the upper extremity and eventually out through the hand at ball release. So I adopted this from Dan Fichter, amazing strength coach he's a fellow Rochesterian, just like me. But we can actually use this 3-step process to address approaching higher levels of specificity. So we're going to start with establishing a position, and we're going to use certain isometric training methods to train that. We're going to train the ability to withstand and absorb force in key positions. And then we're going to find ways to challenge the coordination and stability of those positions in more contextual environments with more game-like movements. So step 1, can we even hit these positions, and can we create tension and stability within these positions that are important? Those attractor states that Randy talks about. So Joe Ken, back in the day, came up with a concept called block 0 that he used with his football guys. A key tenet of that system was to actually utilize long duration isometrics in key positions to build the ability to create tension there, to create mobility and stability there, and to build work capacity there. I stole this pyramid from Michelle Bolin, who also has position as being the foundation of the training. So we can utilize slow speed training, no slower speed than an isometric because there is no movement, and if there is, it's very, very, very slow. And we can put them in these key positions, these attractor states, to begin training the brain and the neuromuscular system to create maximal tension within those key positions. So we're going to utilize our long duration holds here. Dan likes to say when the body's fatigued, it'll revert back to its learned positions and learned postures, and that there's a lot of motor learning that can happen at slow speeds. So we want to make sure that we create a position which is advantageous for our mechanics, and we want to give the brain a chance to feel time under tension there, to create those neural pathways, to be able to create those co-contractions at higher speed a little bit later on. So some exercises we can use to train that co-contraction on the back hip. First one would be a front rack kettlebell wall quarter squat. So I'm going to front rack the kettlebell. That's going to give me some posterior expansion, allow me to shift my weight back, feel my right heel as a right-handed thrower. I'm going to sit to about where I load that back hip, and I'm just going to create and feel all that tension in that position with a whole foot contact. Do a similar thing with a 3D strap. Put on my right shoulder, turn left. The strap is going to try to pull me into external rotation posteriorly there. I need to create good internal rotation forces and maintain a whole foot contact so I can stay stacked, upright, and powerful. Keep that co-contraction in my hip. I can challenge it with some instability with a water ball. Shake it in various directions. Feel the contraction around the hip. Challenge it there and hold that position nice and strong. Similar concept on the front hip. I'm trying to feel as much tension to the adductor group, through the foot, through the hamstring as possible. So I build that capacity to decelerate. The water up top, add some instability up there to drive stability down below. And as I shift my hips, I'm feeling a strong contraction on that front side just to be able to train developing that tension. I can also use the strap. I'm going to put the strap on my left shoulder in this case. Cable is going to pull me forward. I need to use those decelerator muscles. I need to create as much tension as possible and feel those muscles working to stop that acceleration forward and rotationally. Exercises we can use to train the stability of the torso and the ability to transmit force through there. We're looking at different variations of anti-rotation iso holds, pail-off presses, but we can challenge the position. So we can use a classic pail-off press with bilateral stance, but we can lengthen the position by allowing rotation towards the cable and holding tension there. We can also go to a split stance, which is going to really challenge that front functional fascial line from the back hip to the front shoulder. Step 2, now that we can create tension, we're going to need to figure out how to create it fast and withstand force. Exercises to train that co-contraction at a higher speed, more dynamic environment. We're going to add the instability. We're going to chop into that hip, feel the co-contraction and hold. Into the hip, feel the contraction and hold. So a more dynamic approach to building that co-contraction. Everything fires together nice and strong. Feel good force going into the ground. Can challenge it by now pulling the front foot off of the ground and then holding that co-contraction as I step over that hurdle. Nice and controlled, sort of. I'm not great at it. Chop, co-contract, hold the co-contraction, move forward. Similar approach on the front side. I can go left shoulder, turn to the right. I've built the ability to create tension through that front side. Now I want to challenge it at a higher speed. Pull me in, slamming on the brakes. Same concept, instability, variable loading. Feel that coordination of firing that front side, both linearly there and then rotationally as well. I can build the tension, I can co-contract. Now I have to do it at speed with variable loading. Increasing the challenge timing-wise for that torso stability, for firing that core. Use a slingshot to unweight and then have to coordinate the contraction to stop that band from snapping back. You can use a water bag again, water ball in this case, slam on the brakes, fire everything, feel that co-contraction. This one's a little more game-like, pull it back, push it through, fire, fire. Step 3, challenge these co-contractions within a more context relevant. Now that we understand that the co-contraction is a brief isometric contraction, we can see these kind of more specific movements as challenging the isometric. So we're going to go co-contract, go. Fire, fire, go. So I can create the tension, I can create it fast, now I can create it within the context of a throwing specific drill. Same thing for the med ball. Drop off the small box, fire, contract, and then throw that thing as hard as I can into the wall. Co-contract, go. Front side example, same concept. Foot plant from above is the Bosch term for this. I'm going to go up to the box, down to the floor, fire everything fast, and transfer that energy up and through the ball. Up, down, go. Similar exercise. Fire, go. Transfer that energy. And finally, how do we challenge the torso stability? Again, water ball adds variable load. Fire, 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 fire. Similar pattern with the bands. So in conclusion, there's so much more that we could talk about with isometrics, but if we utilize isometric training along the entire continuum of general to specific, we can find ways to implement a whole bunch of different methodologies and challenges for our athletes to help develop them both from a general and a sport-specific perspective. Other applications that maybe we can get into in the future, we can get into some more of those general strength and power development methods via isometrics. We can talk about some of the health benefits to utilizing them in various different applications. And we can talk, obviously, there's a lot of utilization of ISOs in shoulder, forearm, elbow, arm care, if you will, methodologies. So those are directions for the future. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. I feel like we were just getting going, but that's all the time I've been allotted. So if you want to have a further discussion or ask me any questions or give me any feedback whatsoever, my contact information is here. Please get at me with anything that you have, even if it's not related to isometrics. If you just want to talk shop in any sort of way, I love talking to as many people as I can about how to get our baseball athletes better. So thank you so much for your time. Kick it back to the control room here, and I look forward to talking to you soon.